There was a period where I was living the Tao Te Ching, and I was doing so without knowing that I was doing so. I had gone through an awakening and I'd been doing a lot of work to heal some of the trauma that I was experiencing at the time. And I came across the Tao Te Ching during my search of understanding of what that awakening was and what it meant. And as I listened to other people talk about the Tao Te Ching, and I watched a few documentaries here and there, and I listened to the Tao Te Ching audiobook, I immediately connected with what it was saying. I recognized what was happening in my life in those words. But I'd never really sat down and tried to kind of dig into it or study it or anything of the sort. I just knew that there was some kind of correlation between what the book was talking about and what my life looked like at the time. Over the last few months, I have not so much been living that way anymore, and something brought me to this book a few days ago. It's a translation by Feng, or Feng, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and Jane English. And I thought that I would sit down and study it and read through it and maybe be inspired. And as I started reading through it, I came to the first stanza and immediately was reminded of why everything felt so effortless at that time. The practice of Wu Wei, or effortless action, in Taoism. And so I thought that I would start to reflect on my studies and share that online. So I'll start with the translation of what Tao Te Ching means. Tao is the way. In other words, the way of nature, not going against the natural course of things and rather going with the flow of things, right? Te is strength or virtue, and Ching is scripture. So Tao Te Ching, the way of strength or virtue book. Okay. The beginning of the translation does go into just a little bit about Lao Tzu, which they say not much is known, and that he was just kind of connected to this book, and some are even not sure of whether it was actually written by him or not. And then they also talk about yin and yang and the principles of masculine and feminine, yin being female or feminine and yang being masculine. And then just a bunch of ways that we can see this reflected in life: day, night, up, down, left, right, give, take. What else do they have here? Winter, summer, hot, cold, decrease, increase, dragon, tiger, passive, active, right? Or feminine, masculine principles. I won't get into that. I will dive straight into the book. Today I will be talking about the first 3 stanzas. I'll read them and then I will talk a little bit about my interpretation. I will also draw on some of my experiences and the way that I understand the text. It may not be in alignment with others. I haven't dived into anybody else's interpretations. This is the first translation that I'm reading, and it is also the first time that I am making notes on my perspective on this book. So I thought that for those who are interested, I would just post this and share. Yeah? Okay, so I'll begin by reading the first stanza. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of the 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one sees the manifestations. These two spring from the same source, but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gate to all mystery. So the way that I have come to understand this first stanza, the Tao that can be told or named is not the eternal Tao. Through my experiences of awakening, going into a state of consciousness, and having experiences with energy, light, love, the void, etc. Coming out of those experiences, it's almost impossible to explain them to anybody, not only because language is so limited and every word has an attachment of understanding that is different from person to person. So the way that you understand or experience a certain word may not be the same way that I understand or experience it. And because of those limitations, trying to communicate trying to communicate experiences that are beyond the five senses, it becomes fruitless. The minute you explain it, the meaning is lost. The truth of it is lost because the words put a box around it. What I've written in my notes is that the experiences were beyond words. Words box and close. The experiences tore down and opened. Even the word God closes, because we all have an interpretation of what God is, right? The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of the 10,000 things. My interpretation of this, or my understanding of this, is that the nameless, so the one that cannot be named, is source. It is the Alpha and Omega. It is the thing that holds all things. It is the thing from which everything is born. It is the ground that came before creation, if that makes sense. So before things started to become something, the nameless is the thing that existed. Yeah. And then the named is the mother of the 10,000 things. The mother being the thing that created. The nameless, the source, the created, or the thing that is now manifesting, the thing that is now creating. It is becoming something. The mother of the 10,000 things. The mother being creation, that force of creation that awakens possibility in maybe before duality, maybe the birth of duality, the birth of left and right, up and down, feminine, masculine, in order to have that contrast. So even before the duality was born, there was a force to kind of push that duality into being in order for there to be contrast, for there to be experience. So that is the mother of the 10,000 things, all the things that come from creation. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one sees the manifestations. So both are needed for experience. The coin has heads and tails. It does not exist if one is not there. The wave has the trough and the bow. It does not exist if there is no trough or no bow. Both have to be there in order for existence to be. It is necessary. And then when we are in a state of desirelessness, we can see the mystery. We start to kind of open ourselves up to what's driving behind the scenes, right? We open ourselves up to what we are not able to comprehend with our human minds, our human way of thinking. And then the desiring, we see the manifestation. We see what comes from the desirelessness. Again, talking about the named and the unnamed, the source and the force of creation. And then these two spring from the same source but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Come from the same thing. We need to have both. Darkness within darkness, the gate to all mystery. The gate to all mystery, darkness within darkness. This to me means the void. That's the way that I interpreted it. The gate to all mystery. Opening that gate and walking through that gate is how we are able to get a glimpse into that which cannot be named, that which cannot be understood by our human perceptions and our human understanding, particularly through the limited use of language. Okay, so moving on to stanza 2. Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another. Therefore, the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating yet not, working yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten, therefore it lasts forever. So under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. This, for me, is balance, duality, yin and yang, opposites, right? Having, not having, and this just goes into that duality. Having and not having arise together. You cannot have if there is lack. You cannot have if there is no lack, I should say. Difficult and easy complement each other. You cannot know easy if there is no difficult. You cannot know long without short. You cannot know high without low. Voice and sound harmonize, front and back. Okay, so the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching no talking. The teaching no talking part to me means silence. And when you learn true silence, silence of the body, silence of the mind, that is when you have the possibility of walking through that gate, the gate to all mystery. And then the doing nothing. This is maybe the most impactful part of the Tao Te Ching and of Taoism for me. Yet, though I don't know much about it yet, I'm still very early in my learning, is non-doing. Doing without trying to do. Effortless action, otherwise known as Wu Wei. There was a period during my awakening where I didn't have the desire to create. I didn't have the desire to make anything happen. I didn't have the desire to go anywhere, to be anything, I didn't have the desire that I had before. And because I had removed that desire, there was a field of possibility that whatever I put my hands on, that creation happened without the effort of trying to make it happen. It continues. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease. Constant movement. Everything is in constant motion. There is no stillness. There is no stopping point, right? We have to find the stillness in the storm, right? In the movement, and not try to stop the movement. So creating yet not, effortless action. We are making without trying to make. Working yet not taking credit. And to me this means without pride or desire or ownership. I can work and do the work and be okay with leaving it where I've done it. It's done. Let's move on to the next thing. Staying in the present moment. Work is done, then forgotten. Living in the present, right? And therefore it lasts forever. If we are in the present moment, then forever is in the present moment. If we can do work and forget about it, leave it behind, if we can create and not be attached to it, in other words, staying in the, if we are attached, we are saying we hope for something in the future, to maybe recognition of the work we have done, maybe something to come out of the work we have done. So that non-attachment, meaning we stay in the present moment. When we're in the present, every moment exists in the now. There is no past and no future when you come out of this 3D consciousness, when you start to move further and further into deeper states of awareness or deeper states of consciousness. Living in the present makes everything last forever. The notes that I have on this stanza is that duality is necessary for experience. Non-doing. In non-doing, I'm doing things even without the effort to have them done, without the desire for creation or completion. Every step is completion. And this for me is such a powerful notion, because we have this notion in society that we must get from A to Z. If we start at A, we must do every step and we must get to Z. Otherwise, we have not succeeded. Otherwise, we have not attained the goal. And I think that just by having that mind, we are setting ourselves up for failure. We are saying that what we are doing right now is not enough. We are living, in other words, in the future, in the possibility of what could be, in the hope of what could be. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I'm just saying that for those who wish to transcend the current way of living, those who wish to dive deeply into knowledge such as this, and not just practice it, but learn to embody it, that this principle of completion is illusion. That the way that I see it, the way that I connect with it, is that every moment is a moment of completion. That if I live in that moment of completion, I'm living in the present fully. And then the last point, if we remain in the present, then every moment is eternal, because we do not bother ourselves about the existence of a past or of a future. Stanza 3. Not exalting the gifted prevents quarreling. Not collecting treasures prevents stealing. Not seeing desirable things prevents confusion of the heart. The wise therefore rule by emptying hearts and stuffing bellies, by weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. If men lack knowledge and desire, then clever people will not try to interfere. If nothing is done, then all will be well. Okay, so not exalting the gifted prevents quarreling. When we exalt, we put others above us. We say that there is something I wish to aspire to. There is something I am lacking. If we do not exalt, then we do not cause separation in our minds between those we believe are better at something and ourselves who we believe are not as good. Removing exaltation, if that is the right word, if that is a word, is basically allowing everything to be as it is, when it needs to be, how it needs to be, without defining, giving roles, giving meaning, giving definition, giving value, most importantly, without placing value on actions, on deeds, on people. Okay, not collecting treasures prevents stealing. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Not seeing desirable things prevents confusion of the heart. What I wrote was, what I want versus what I think I want. So that desire is created from all the layers of perception in our experience of reality. I believe that I want this thing because I have learned that this is something that I should want, right? That comes from social constructs, from what we've learned around us. By removing those layers, we're able to see beyond the illusion of desire, the illusion that desire creates. So when we remove that desire, when we don't see something as desirable, we don't confuse the heart. We don't tell the heart that there is something that you lack. There is something that you need. There is something that you must have or that you don't currently have. Instead, the heart can stay in the truth of knowing that everything it needs, it has. The wise, therefore, rule by emptying hearts and stuffing bellies, okay? By weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. So we give up the following ideas of success. We give up following ideas of success and following others' paths, and instead we work on the self. Okay? And then, if men lack knowledge and desire, then clever people will not try to interfere. The world we currently live in is so smart, so intelligent, right? Or rather than intelligent, so intellectual. We know stuff and we're proud of what we know. And that creates, again, illusion. It creates more layers of perception that separates us from the truth, that push us further and further away from who we really are, from the natural course of life. And so by removing the desire to have knowledge, to acquire knowledge, and to acquire anything, in essence, allows us to be closer to the truth. And I'll give you an example in my own experiences of awakening. When I had my experiences of sudden enlightenment, or I think they call it Satori in Japan, I was at a state of completely stripping everything away. I had no desire to acquire anything or any knowledge. And because of that, I didn't have any expectations of life, any expectations of meditation, of healing, of the journey. I could just allow what was to be. When I started to acquire knowledge, I started to expect things to work in a certain way. I started to expect things to happen. And as that expectation grew, there also grew a distance between the experiences and the ease. They weren't easy anymore because now I had knowledge. Knowledge was forming this barrier. Knowledge was forming this wall that was making it difficult to see the truth, right? It was layering on perception and perspective. If nothing is done, then all will be well. The way I see it, you cannot lose what you believe you do not need. The Tao Te Ching is such a complex piece of work, and I think that even in reading through any one of the interpretations and translations, that everybody will come with their own understanding and their own meaning of it. Life for me was the easiest when I was living according to this work. Now, bearing in mind that at the time I didn't know about this work, I only knew I was living according to it because I had later come across it and recognized my state of being to be quite closely connected to the Tao Te Ching. At that time, even when difficulty arose, there was no resistance to the difficulty. There was no resistance to the feelings that arose through the difficulty. There was acceptance on all fronts for both sides of the coin. Yeah, so I hope that this interpretation has been somewhat useful, and as I continue to study through this material, I will continue to share. It may not be every stanza, but the ones that really stand out to me, I will make videos on and post those every so often. There are 81, and that's a lot of videos if I do every single stanza. Anyway, if you guys have something that stood out to you or your own understanding, I would love for you to share it in the comments. It's always interesting to engage on topics like this, and also for any others who do kind of come across these videos and read the comments. I think it's always great to have different perspectives. So please feel free to do that. And yeah, have a good one.